Okay, on Tuesday of Passion Week, when the Greeks come, Jesus says, "Ah, my hour has come." He had been saying that all along. My hour's not yet come, my hour's not yet come, my hour's not yet come, my hour's not yet come. On Tuesday, he says, "My hour has come. Shall I pray, deliver me from this hour? No, I will pray, Father, glorify your name." That's Tuesday. Thursday, where we are today on page 221, he is praying, "Father, deliver me from this hour." Now, do you know how human that is? You know, when you get closer to the thing, all of a sudden it's real. Have you noticed that? When it's way off in the distance, we can be, "Oh, that's going to be easy. That's not a problem." And Jesus says, "Shall I not be about my Father's business at 12?" He says to Mary in the wedding at Cana, one of his first events, "Woman, what have I to do with you? My hour's not yet come." In Judea, when they're about to stone, "Oh, I'm safe. My hour's not yet come." In Perea, "I'm safe. You know, people don't die apart from Jerusalem." He was almost exuding confidence as he's working his way to that hour. And on Tuesday, it's the same. "Shall I pray, deliver me from this hour? No, this is why I came into the world. This is the divine appointment. This is the Lamb slain before the foundation of the earth. That's me. Here's the appointment. Shall I pray, Father, deliver me? No, he doesn't pray that. He says, I'll say rather, Father, glorify your name. Isn't that a really solid approach to it? Then he gets into Gethsemane and it's all crashing in on him. Some of you may be feeling that way right now. It was so easy in September, but now everything's crashing in on me. And I'm not going to make it. Is there any other way? Could I clap it? Is there another way out of this? That's exactly what Jesus is doing. Have you ever had anybody tell you that before? We won't talk that way about it. We will not let Jesus be very human. This is a very human thing. When something dreadful is out there, when we're distant, removed from it time-wise, it's not so bad. But as it comes closer and closer and closer, it gets harder and harder and harder. And our emotional part of our life really kicks into high gear at that point. Look at what he says. It's 221, bottom of the page. He began to be sorrowful, troubled, greatly distressed, troubled. And 38, very sorrowful, overwhelmed. It's about to wash in on him and flooding. And something starts to go through his mind. So he gets three of the disciples, Peter, James, and John, and says, "You pray here that you don't enter into temptation." Why was temptation on his mind? Because he was entering into temptation. Just like at the beginning, so at the end. And Satan's out there licking his chops. He's getting weak. I'm going to push. Look how he prays, page 222. Now let it say what it says. We people who love the doctrine of the deity of Christ, and we do, don't do real well with the humanity of Christ. We won't let the Bible speak what the Bible says. When Jesus said earlier, not even the Son of Man knows the hour, that's what it means. He's not playing a trick on us. And when we come to this, what he means is what he is saying here. My Father, if it is possible, this is not hard to understand. If it is possible, let this cup pass from me. What's he asking for? He's saying, Father, if it's possible, some other way, let this cup pass from me. This is dreadful. He adds, nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. Not my will, but your will be done. That is a contrast, not a comparison. Not my will, but your will be done, nevertheless. That says opposing wills, doesn't it? Does it say that, kids? Not my will, but thine be done. If I'd say that to you, you'd understand exactly what I am meaning. No, not my will, but your will be done. That's easy to understand. The English is easy. The Greek is easy. Not my will, but thine be done. There's a difference there. Now, somebody find in your New Testament Hebrews 5. Who has the Bible here? And what is being described by the author of Hebrews is this scene in Gethsemane. He's crying out to God with strong cryings. He's praying to him. He was heard. He was heard. And though he were a son, your translation said through reverence, whatever? Submission. Reverence, submission. The word is, though he were a son, through fear, he learned obedience. He was fearful of disobeying his father. And he's crying out with strong cryings and prayers and tears. And his father gave him an answer to the prayer. What was the answer? No. There's no other way. I can't let the cup pass from you. And he became obedient. He learned obedience through the things which he suffered. That is an enormous statement of his perfect humanity. He submitted to his Father's will. Look, he says, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Now drop down to verse 42. We'll pick up in between, but drop down to 42. This is the second prayer. My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. Can you identify the movement that's taking place in the life, in the thinking of the Lord there? Look, the first place he says, Father, if it's possible. This time he says, if it's impossible. What's happening in his brain? He's moving from, if this is possible, I guess it's impossible. He's moving toward obedience. Now, I want you to turn the page after he gets arrested. He will say, bottom of 225, far right side, shall I not drink the cup which the Father has given me? Isn't that wonderful? He finally works his way through obedience. Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Father, if it's not possible that this cup should pass from me, your will, not mine, be done. Shall I not drink the cup which the Father has given me? And what happens in his human struggling here is he presents the issue, he backs off a little bit, and then he says, I'll do it. Once he decided that, he was serene in going to the cross. He was in total control of his emotions, and hence he could say those 7 things from the cross in all that pain and be victorious and finally dismiss his spirit. He's in control. The struggle of obedience is Gethsemane. Once he gets through that, he just goes forward with enormous conviction to carry out his Father's will. And that's the same way we work through learning obedience. That's why in Hebrews 4 he can say, the author, we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted as we are, even in relationship to obedience. And he worked his way through it in a setting that we will never have to work our way through. So he can always give us comfort and encouragement and bring to mind, there is no temptation befallen you, but such as is common to man. I've experienced the worst of it. and I'll provide help for you. It's that simple. It's a wonderful truth. And this is an enormous struggle that he's going through. Don't pass this off by saying, oh, he's the God, man, it's no big deal. Man as though he were not God, God as though he were not man, united in one person forever. And that's what we're dealing with. And he is struggling in a greater way than you and I will ever have to struggle over sin, to resist this temptation. And he is victorious. He came to the disciples, verse 40, found them sleeping. That's Peter, James, and John. Remember, they had not had any sleep. Any of you ever pull an all-nighter? Isn't it hard? The next day, you don't even know where am I? Life gets hazy on you. The disciples had not had any sleep. They had gone right through all of the experience of Thursday, the upper room discourse, all of that sort of thing, over to the garden. They didn't sleep Thursday night. So they're tired. Makes sense, doesn't it? So they go into a nice garden, and just the three of them, Jesus says, pray. They get down on their knees and pray, having had no sleep. And what happened? They went to sleep. He says, watch and pray, that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. That's a great verse. Jesus, in his hour of enormous trial, comes back to them and gives them a word of encouragement. I know who you guys are. The flesh is willing, the spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. Sometimes our flesh can't keep up with our spirit. Have you ever noticed that? You get so tired you can't do it anymore. You want to keep doing it. You want to keep at it, and you can't. Jesus knows that. Psalm 103, one of the best verses in the whole Bible. He knows our frame, that we are dust. We get tired. They were tired. And he says, you guys got to pray. Come on. I know. The spirit's willing, you're wanting to, but the flesh is weak. Keep trying. So a second time, he goes in and prays the same word. A little different, same kind of thing. And again he came and found their eyes sleeping, and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. I love that statement. He says, I understand, guys, you're tired. Their eyes were heavy. They didn't know what they came back and, hi, Jesus, how's your prayer time going? We're struggling. So was he. He went again the third time, saying the same words, with a little variation. I've pointed out the variation. He came to the disciples third time and said, are you still sleeping, taking your rest? It is the hour. The hour is at hand. This is the hour. It's a good sermon. If any of you guys have to give a one sermon when you go home at Christmas break, give a sermon on the hour. Just trace it all the way through. It's an exciting statement. My hour is not yet come, my hour is not yet come, my hour is not yet come. Should I pray, deliver me from this hour? No, I'll pray, glorify me. The hour come, whammo. Here we are. The hour's at hand. The hour isn't actually an hour. The hour is 6 hours. The hour is 3 hours of substitutionary death. It's the appointment concept has come. Don't limit it to 1 hour. Behold, the hours come, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. My betrayer is at hand. So Judas had entered into this plot on Wednesday, and now it's late Thursday, very early Friday morning. Up at the top of the page, 224, it says Thursday after midnight. What is Thursday after midnight? Friday. Okay, that's not a hard question. It's early Friday morning, probably. Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. So Judas, procuring a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests and the Pharisees, went there with lanterns and torches and weapons. Now this was the plot, that he would identify him. Now Jesus will have some questions, and they're the questions we all would raise. Why didn't they arrest him in the temple? Why not? He was in the temple Tuesday. All the people, right, for fear of the Jews. The plot was to arrest him by stealth. Here's the stealth. In this private garden where they often went, Judas knew the place. Well, anybody could know the place. You just had to follow him when he left one Tuesday and Wednesday. He was in the upper room in Jerusalem. It would have been not very difficult. But this is going to be the picture on the Jerusalem Journal for early Friday morning. Look at this. Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss. They wouldn't say betray. They say Judas confirms position of Sanhedrin about fraud Messiah. Trusted member of a group identifies and sides with the Sanhedrin. Whoa. So he gets the soldiers and he's going out there with all the leadership of the Sanhedrin. Immediately while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the scribes and the elders. This is a Jewish action, not a Roman action. You're going to have 3 Jewish trials, then 3 Roman trials. The Romans aren't involved yet. The man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. Now picture this. It's a dark night. They're coming with torches, and Judas is right in front. He knows where to go. Jesus, knowing all that was to befall him, think of that, came forward out of the shadows and said, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When he said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. I love this scene, don't you? Here they're all coming out with clubs and torches and swords and all the rest of it, and Judas comes out and identifies, "Where's Jesus?" Jesus says, "I am he," and they all fall down. Don't you like that? This little burst of deity on the scene. Bzz. They all fall down. He says, "Come on, who are you seeking?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth. I told you that I am he. So if you seek me, let these men go." It's a little plea bargaining here. Let these men go. This was to fulfill the word which he had spoken, "Of those whom thou gavest me, I lost no one." And they all go. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I shall kiss is the man. Seize him." As if they had not seen him. This is all the plot to focus on Judas identifies fraud Messiah. If they would have had flash bulbs or cell phone, they would have been taking pictures like crazy of this one. That's the picture. He kisses the Son of Man. He came up to Jesus and said, "Hail, Master," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss? Friend, why are you here?" And they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And all the disciples that were still hanging around, they all have the same thing, same concept. Those who were about him saw what would follow, and they said, "Lord, shall we strike with the sword?" And Peter, the fisherman, goes for his sword. Now, a fisherman's not good with a sword, you know. So he goes for his sword. And he goes after Malchus with his sword. Now, you think he was trying to cut off the ear of Malchus? What was he trying to do? Cut off his head. Wah! And Malchus does one of these. You can probably tell if Peter's left-handed or right-handed. He cut off his right ear. That would probably... What would be the motion that would, might have done one of those glancing blows and came and his ear falls off. And Jesus, "Peter, put your sword in its sheath. All who take the sword will perish by the sword." You probably thought that came from Shakespeare. Jesus said that. If you're a soldier, you're going to die being a soldier. If you take a sword, you die by the sword. It's not always, but that's the principle. Put your sword back in its place. Do you not think I can appeal to my Father, and he will send 12 legions of angels? But now that Scripture be fulfilled, It must be so. Shall I not drink the cup which your father's given me? Doesn't he sound victorious now? He's not in a garden crying out anymore, Father, deliver me. He is so strong now. Put your sword away. I'm going to do what the Father told me to do. Shall I not drink that cup? Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Put it away. Malchus, where's your ear? And he comes up with his ear in his hand. And he says, boom, and it's back on. Malchus will wear glasses the rest of his life. You have to think about that one a little bit, yeah? Be very hard if you didn't have an ear. All right? I wonder whatever became of Malchus. I wonder whatever became of Barabbas. You think they'd have a special inclination to Jesus, don't you? At that same hour, Jesus said to them, to the crowds, to the chief priests and elders and all the rest of them, have you come out against me as a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? I was with you in the temple all the time. Why didn't you do it then? Well, that wasn't the plot. That wasn't the stealth scheme. That wouldn't have worked. This all took place to fulfill Scripture. Then all the disciples forsook him. All of them. Not only Peter, all of them. So the band of soldiers and the chief captain, the officers of the Jews, do you see it? Seized Jesus and bound him, and they all forsook him. Mary, whose home was this, not the Virgin Mary, Mary, the mother of John Mark, of a rich sort. She had servants. We see her servant in the book of Acts, Rhoda. John Mark was from that family. They hear about what's going on, that Jesus is being arrested or something is going to be, and they send John. She sends John Mark out, and John gets to the garden just as they're going to arrest Jesus. A young man followed him with his pajamas only on. Man, go warn Jesus, they're going to arrest him. And he got out of bed, ran across whatever part of Jerusalem, down the valley up, and gets to the garden just as they're arresting him. And they seized him along with the others. They tried to get the rest. And he left the linen cloth, ran away naked. Don't envision that part of the story of the life of Christ. There's John Mark. You see him running off. Do you see him running off? There he is. Now, strangely enough, that's in the Gospel of Mark. A little P.S. I was there. Page 227, Thursday night. Then those who had seized Jesus leads them to Caiaphas, the high priest. Caiaphas, and in the right column you have Annas. He was the father-in-law of the Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was this Caiaphas who had given counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one should die for the people. Being priest, he spoke by the Holy Spirit. Remember that? Same Caiaphas. And his father-in-law, who had been kicked out of the office because he was in trouble with the Jews, but he was still the power behind the scene. You have the story of Peter, intermittent to the events, a shot here, shot there, shot later. Peter is following at a distance. And then he comes a little closer. Now let's read John's Gospel, 2:27. Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. The other disciple was John, who was writing. Never refers to himself directly. As this disciple was known to the high priest, he entered the courtyard. John knew the high priest. He had some ins with him. John was known in that way. Peter stood outside. So John says to the maid at the door, bring Peter in. Don't blame this on Peter that he went inside. I've heard stupid messages on the progression of Peter in sin. He's outside, and then he's in, and then he's sitting down. And they blame it all on Peter. John's the one that asked him to come in. He made arrangements for it. Get after John. If you're going to get after anybody, I think it's a good thing Peter was there, don't you? Where were the rest of them? Only John and Peter were close. The other ones were still running in the opposite direction, along with John Mark. And Peter is there. The maid who kept the door said to Peter, are you not also one of the man's disciples? He said, I'm not. No. And when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard, it was cold. And Peter was with them warming himself, and he sat down with them to warm himself. Well, why wouldn't you? And sat down. He was asleep a little bit in the garden. He's tired. So he sits down. Look, it's devotion that brings him close to Jesus, just like with the Apostle John. And he's sitting down getting warm because that's a comfortable thing to do. He was cold. He had been in the garden praying, had a hard time doing that. He's tired, but he's there. That's all good stuff. Not bad stuff. Well, there's a conflict, obviously. Now, what starts up on page 228 are the trials. There are 3 Jewish trials, 3 Roman trials. This is how they go. The Jewish trial, preliminary trial with Annas as the rest of the Sanhedrin's gathering. It was an inquisition, cross-examination. Then when they all get there, they have a kangaroo court illegal trial. And then as soon as it's sunrise, when the sun rises, now they can really have an official trial. It's that fast. Bang, bang, guilty. Then they take him over to the Roman territory and stand back because they didn't want to defile themselves. What a nauseating statement. And they stand back, and Pilate has his first inquisition. When Jesus mentions he's from Galilee, or someone mentions that, oh, that's good, Herod Antipas is in town right now, we'll have a change of venue. So he gets the second Roman trial before Herod Antipas. This is the one that put John the Baptist to death. Jesus would not even talk to him. I love that. A serene silence. Just stands there and looks at him. Oh, is that good? And then Herod Antipas sends him back to Pilate for the final statement. All of this takes place before 9 o'clock. Sunrise to 9. 6 trials. That's quick. It's very quick. 2 of them are illegal. They start before sunrise. So here's the first of those. Put a big 1. Jesus is cross-questioned by Annas. It says Thursday night. In the parenthesis next to that on page 228. We have already seen on the top of the page earlier, Thursday night after midnight. This is real early Friday morning. The high priest then questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus says, I have spoken openly to the world. I have always taught in the synagogues and in the temple, where all Jews come together. I have said nothing secretly. Why do you ask me? Ask those who heard me what I said to them. They know what I said. When he had said this, one of the officers standing by struck Jesus with his hand, saying, Is that how you answer the high priest? And Jesus answered him, If I have spoken wrongly, bear witness to the wrong. But if I have spoken rightly, why do you strike me? So the chief priest's servant strikes him. Is that how you answer the high priest? Annas then sent him bound, and we begin the second trial now on page 229. Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas, the high priest. Now the chief priests and the whole council sought testimony against Jesus. Now they're all gathered together. They had sent out word. Annas is doing this preliminary inquisition in trial number 1. Here in trial number 2, the whole Sanhedrin's there. They are trying to figure out how they're going to have a legal way of putting him to death. So they're seeking witnesses. And they found none. Many said false things. And they didn't agree. But finally, they found a couple of witnesses who said this. He said, I'm able to destroy the temple of God. I will destroy this temple that is made with hands, and in 3 days I will build another not made with hands. Yet not even that testimony agreed. Now what were they talking about when they said that? You remember right at the beginning? They said, give us a sign that you can cleanse this temple. He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll raise it up again. How did they interpret that? Yeah, it's a temple in Jerusalem. He would destroy that temple, and in 3 days build it up again. This temple that was made with hands, in 3 days build it up again as a temple not made with hands. They thought he was claiming he's going to destroy the temple and build a new one, some miraculous way. They missed the point. What was Jesus saying when he said, destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll raise it up? Destroy me. Put me to death, and in 3 days there'll be resurrection. That's the Yankee Doodle A1 sign. Resurrection from the dead. So, that's the charge. False charges. And the high priest stands up in this preliminary trial in Matthew's column. The high priest stood up and said, have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? Jesus was silent. The high priest says this, I put you under oath. I adjure you by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Now he's under oath. He has to answer now. Look what he says. You have said so. That is, I agree with that statement. But I tell you that hereafter you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. Now, here's a hard question. What is Jesus referring to there? You will see the Son of Man seated in a place of power, coming in power and great glory in the clouds of heaven. What passage from the Bible does that relate to? Pardon? Right answer. Daniel 7. Daniel 7. What do you have in Daniel 7? It is a glorious passage in Daniel 7. In Daniel, you have this great section of government. Babylon's going to be here, and then Medo-Persia, then Greece, then Rome. And in Daniel 7, you have the Son of Man going into the Ancient of Days and receiving kingdom and authority and power. And his coming will be on the clouds of heaven, coming to receive this inheritance, this fifth kingdom that will destroy all the other world empires. And Jesus says, next time you see me, I will be here to establish my kingdom with power and great glory and the authority of heaven. And the priest goes, he's claimed deity again. What do we need any more than that? He tears his robes and, he has uttered blasphemy. Why do we still need witness? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment? The high priest tore his mantle and said, let's do it. He deserves death. That's a true statement. And one day, at the end of the tribulation, the heavens will open, and we've seen this in the Olivet Discourse. You will see the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens, all against the backdrop of the cataclysmic things that are happening in tribulation time. The darkness, the sun darkened, the moon darkened, and all of a sudden heaven opens up. And you see the Shekinah glory returning to Israel. And the Son of Man with all his myriads of angels coming back. Oh, that's going to be a picture. We'll be coming back with him. Won't that be fun? It will be. That's what they're looking to. He can't believe this. They spat in his face. Struck him. Some slapped him. Prophesy to us, you Christ, you phony Messiah. Who was it that struck you? Scene shifts. Peter's below in the courtyard. One of the maids of the high priest came, seeing Peter warming himself. She looked and said, you are with the Nazarene Jesus. He denied it. I neither know nor understand what you mean. And he went away into the gateway. The maid saw him there and said, this man is one of them. He says, I'm not. After an interval, about an hour, Simon Peter was standing and warming himself. They said, are you not also one of the disciples? He denied and said, I am not. Certainly you are one of them, for you're a Galilean. Well, you know, they're down in Jerusalem and they could pick out a Galilean. How could they pick out a Galilean? Yeah, the Matthew column tells them how. Your accent betrays you. You don't talk the way we do down here in Jerusalem. You're from the farm country. Peter had an accent. He came up from the hill country. He's a fisherman accent up in Galilee, you know. Your ex-son betrayed. Oh, and then he goes into a fit. Oh, I never knew this guy. I don't blankety blank blank blank. I swear by the table, I curse. I do all the. I don't know the guy. And the rooster goes off. Ah, it's morning, early in the morning. Now it's legal to have a trial. That's what we're going to have soon. Now look at this. This is out there in the courtyard early on. The Lord turned and looked at Peter, top page 231, and their eyes met. Can you speak without speaking? You don't have to speak. You can communicate just by... What did these... Peter looks at Jesus and their eyes lock. They don't say anything. Peter goes out and weeps bitterly. Jesus said, just in the look, he said, remember, Peter? I said, before the sun rises, you're going to deny me 3 times. Do you remember? And Peter remembered in that look, and he went out and wept. Look what was going against Peter. In the book of Zechariah, it said, strike the shepherd and the sheep will be scattered. It's already locked in prophetic fulfillment that the disciples are going to be running like cockroaches when the light turns on. They're going to whack. Okay? Already prophesied 500 years earlier. Jesus had already said to Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And then Satan had earlier said, I want to get hold of Peter and break him down, and God had given permission. Peter was going to deny the Lord for sure. But he's going to be restored for sure. So we come on the middle of 231 to the third and the official time. Do you notice when day came, as soon as it was morning? Now we can have a legal trial. We had the Inquisition illegally. We had the kangaroo court trial illegal. We already found him guilty. Now let's put it on the paper as legal. 6 o'clock in the morning, the trial takes place.